Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Amir, and I am practically rubbing my 2-inch dong for today's guest, the Goonfather, Shon Brennan. How are you?
Woo! What's causing all this?
So, for the new people especially, would you mind giving an overview of how you got involved in this saga?
Oh wow, it's a long story. So back in 2006, since the early days of YouTube, I've always been a fan of prank calls and like a lot of the goons, specifically the public access varieties, because for some reason they're even more awful than usual prank calls for some reason. I don't know why that is. They always come off funnier. But But then one day I came across some guy in Richmond named George Yared, whose reactions I have never seen in my history of prank calls. Even since then, not seen anybody who's reacted to being insulted the way that he has. I mean, I don't even have to explain it because everybody knows by now the nonsensical stuff he says, the GG-isms, and everything in between is what makes his stuff classic. And probably will be classic until whatever new prank medium comes along.
Yeah, yeah. Um, George's rage-induced sayings are definitely very unique. Are you at all surprised, or I'd love to get your thoughts in general on how long
Mhm.
this saga has gone on and how long you've been involved for?
Let's see, how long has it gone on for? That's a good question because technically it's gone on before even anybody was trolling him because he would go on these tirades on his show about how he thought feminists were going after him and how feminists were the ones ruining his show. And once again, this was the internet was around, but there wasn't really the kind of message boards that really started until the late '90s or so. So, in terms of George trolling himself, probably since the advent of his talk show, but the Goons, probably 2004-ish, somewhere around there. But people have been pranking him since I think the late '90s, somewhere around there.
Wow. So you've been involved in this for a long time. Are you surprised it's gone on this long? And did you have any moments where you're like, this is so dumb. Why does this keep going?
um, Partially yes, partially no, because when I trolled people in the past, they were always one-offs. The first video I did of George, which was a little thing called "Why Gorgeous George Sucks," the first thing he said to me, and I'll never forget this, is "Who in the fuck is this?" And then he spent, I forget how much time trying to figure out who I was. And around that time was the first indication that I knew this was going to go on for a long time. And it wasn't until I showed my face that he was literally going everywhere trying to find pictures of me. And once he figured out that I wasn't Brandon, because he thought for a short while that I was Brandon Hardesty, who was a pre Will Markland. He's been on South Park and did a lot of indie movies. I think he was also a comic, if I remember correctly. But shortly after that, he went into, of course, how he started calling me fat and gay, which I thought was fucking hilarious. I thought that was a hilarious form of projection on his part. But how do I articulate this? But yeah, around this time, I knew it was going to last for a long time. Did I think it would last this long? No, I thought George would have either gone, you either would have ignored us by now and or would have gone back to quote unquote his normal life. But I didn't even know that he had the kind of life he did until the early 2010s, if that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense. I know that was
yeah.
sort of rambling.
No, no, please do. I love it. And oh God, I have so many things to ask. So I'm gonna try not to jump around too much, but you mentioned learning more about his personal life. I mean, learning things about his bankruptcy, the state of his house, his personal relationships. I mean, what's your reaction when you first hear some of those more bombshell moments from George's life?
There was, I think anybody knew this back then that there was always cracks in the facade. It's just none of us really knew what it was per se at the time. We all knew he wasn't living in a mansion and that he wasn't quote unquote having a six income figure. But the first major crack, like I said, was the house. But I think when I was sort of taken aback was the whole bankruptcy thing because of how proud George was and how he wanted to show people that his life was perfect, but he couldn't even have a normal day to day life. I mean, by this time, and this was actually the first instance when I called into his radio show and said, I loved your house on Hoarders. He had a picture on eBay, and his house was trashed. And this was back in 2009. His leather jacket was on the floor. He had papers on the floor. I think there was a Coke can, if I remember correctly. It was, I mean, for somebody who had such pride, he just he literally gave no fucks. I think that was around the time when I wasn't that surprised anymore.
Yeah, I gotta imagine at a certain point you become completely desensitized to GG nonsense.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
was around that time
you brought up
for me anyway.
hoarding, and you've made a comment about this before. I'd love to get a deeper opinion, though. What do you think about George's uh, how he was kind of a hoarder at the end of his time at 1307? Do you like psychologically? Do you have any opinions on what that stems from?
Uh, it's a tough question. Every hoarder is a little bit different, but
Mm.
the typical thing I know about them is they just have a hard time of letting things go appropriately enough. Every little thing that they have, whether it be a newspaper or a document, has some sort of emotional significance to them. So because of that, it becomes more and more overwhelming to sort through that. And I think that's part of the reason. The other reason is because of George's, and this is not something I don't think many of us have talked about yet, is his depression, which is hard to believe, but with his narcissism, you can tell that it has taken an effect on him. And how do I articulate this? Yeah, this is where I'm going to struggle for a few minutes.
Oh yeah, you're
And
fine.
just like
Take your
that, I
time.
don't mind part.
No, no, I get you. I mean that definitely tracks of people who have a very prolonged and untreated narcissistic personality disorder. I mean that kind of inner fragile state, it will kind of grow from within, and usually when they get into their twilight years, that's when you do see um, kind of the more passive symptoms take on, like depression. And I mean,
Yeah,
it definitely tracks that that's something that'll continue to build in George's psyche as he ages.
I remember reading in a DSM a long time ago, and I laughed at the description because it sort of reminded me of George. How a typical narcissist first visit is they'll come there dressed to the nines, and they'll usually try to flatter the psychologist by bringing them some sort of gift. And I could totally imagine George doing that for his first psychologist appointment if he ever decided to do that on his own.
Do you think he would refuse to see a male psychologist?
Oh, you know it. It definitely have to be a female of George because it. I mean, seriously. In addition to to him, just hating women, it's a controlling thing with him. He think he'd be able to manipulate them far easier and make them see his point of view.
Yeah. Unfortunately
Yeah.
for him, not intelligent enough, I think, to do that. So, in your opinion, very broad
Hmm.
question here, what makes Gigi a lolcow?
Oh God, with George, it's more like what does it make him a little cool. Uh, I mean, seriously, I could probably write a dissertation on why George is a lolcow. Everything from him lying about his house, his job, the kind of cars he drives. I mean, this is the kind of guy who was going around saying how important he was driving a Mercedes mom's looking station wagon. It literally looked like the kind of car you would drive your kids home in from soccer practice, and everything in between. The kind of women he attracted, that the only way he could get women was through money. He could never find them through normal means or just having a conversation with them. It was always through coercion, and I could literally go on and on and on and on about why George is a little cow. And of course, his diet. He has no discipline. um. Then,
So,
oh,
no, please go on. I
no,
want to hear the dissertation.
his bad, just financial. I mean, George thought it was more wise to spend money on some guy on the
You're
internet in
right.
Nigeria than it was to invest in the stock market. I mean, how batshit insane is that?
Some of my favorite moments in the Saunders
Mhm.
calls is when Saunders gives George shit for prioritizing suing the trolls over paying bills. That's the
Oh
funniest thing
yes,
to me.
yeah. Priorities and George are two streets that'll never meet.
Yeah, well put. So,
Mhm.
I mean, there are so many reasons that he's a lolcow. Is there a specific one or few that you think make it so easy for the goons to psychologically dominate him?
I think since George has never really had a parental figure, I know we always talk about his dad and he talks about his dad, but I really think TV was George's father. I think that's what he was raised on. I think his dad either went on dates or just drunk beer on Saturday nights and just didn't really want to deal with them.
Wow, yeah.
Um, I think that's one aspect of it, that he sort of on a subconscious level sees us as fatherly figures, which is really bizarre to think about. But he, this is the other hard thing that's really hard. A lot of it's hard to articulate because I'm not exactly the most articulate person in the world. But um, George, George just can't say no. That's the other part of it. Like George will know he's in a losing battle, but will still fight it anyway, even if it's at the expense of whatever little pride he has,
Yeah. Oh,
which
yeah.
is none, basically, or self
Right.
worth.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of examples of that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Sean, do you think goons are obsessed?
Oh no, it's the other way around. Matter of fact, George could fall off the face of the earth tomorrow, and we would still be talking about other people. And that's the other thing. George thinks that our lives. I mean, when we're on the Discord, or anything, all we do is talk about him. I mean, no, we've talked about our personal lives on occasion. We talk about other lol cows, and this is the other thing I don't think he realizes is how well he brings us together as a group. Um, for example, GoonCon, that's going to actually be a thing that's going to happen next year, and it's because of George why it's happening.
Yeah. Oh,
I
I
mean, George
cannot wait.
brings people together.
Yeah, he really does. And yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I'll be honest, like the past few weeks or whatever it's been since he made his official last video ever about the trolls, LOL. It's
Hmm.
actually been pretty peaceful having him. I've enjoyed kind of having a relaxed um connection with this, but at the same time, yeah, when GG stuff is popping, um, it is just fun to talk with everyone about it. So it is a really interesting relationship. But yeah, I mean, George is the only one who seems to start and stop his day with what's happening in this saga. So I definitely agree that he's the one who's obsessed.
Yeah,
Do
I've been
you?
told by. Oh, sorry.
No, please do go. You've been told
No,
by.
I was going to say I've been told by certain people that he starts off the day by asking certain people about what we're doing in Discord, which, if that's true, is hilarious. I have a hard time believing that he doesn't think about us. I would say at least on average an hour a day.
Oh
Like
yeah.
what we're
Oh yeah.
planning, how we're going to try to screw with certain things that he's planning, and that kind of thing. I actually think he's quite paranoid about us still.
Yeah,
Um,
paranoid is a really good word because I have to imagine any new thing that he tries in his life, he's gonna at some point in the process have a thought like, "Oh, what are the goons gonna do if they find out about this?"
yeah, I think even when he's firm on a decision, he still second guesses it because of us. Uh, for example, I'm sure if he meets somebody who he's interested with doing a video, I'm sure the next thought in his process is, is this somebody associated with the goons? I think his worst fear right now is working with somebody and they turn out later to be a goon.
Oh yeah, yeah, that will make him paranoid through the end of his life.
That
And
would devastate George.
yeah, I can imagine. Speaking on that, then, do you have a prediction of how this saga ends from George's end?
It, sadly, the every way it probably has with it, every lolcow at least so far, it's death. I don't see George changing. Are you familiar with Terry A. Davis?
I'm not.
He was a schizophrenic lolcow who came up with this what do you call it? This operating system called Tempo OS, which was based off of the Bible. And he would add all these weird, nonsensical things, and he would do rants on the street. At one time, a black guy was walking next to him, and he said, "Hey, N word, how you doing?" And but his parents eventually threw him out of the house, and he was living on the street for a while. Then one day he walked in front of the train and killed himself. I don't think George would kill himself, but I don't think he has the self worth enough to say, you know what, I have a problem. Maybe I should see somebody about helping me. So I think I know some of the goons have debated how long he's going to live. And with George, I think he's stubborn enough to at least last the next couple of years, but his legs are starting to look pretty bad. And once
Yeah,
those
they're
start to go,
scary.
I think, yeah, I think his health is going to really decline rapidly, at which point he's probably not going to live that much longer.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. You had mentioned earlier that not a lot of people discuss George's depression. Is there anything else GG related that you don't think gets talked about enough in this community?
These days, actually, um, I would say the things that made him originally famous. I think a lot of focus on the fact that, and I definitely focused on Jamie, but I also think it should be focused that George is this lolcow who has the complete inability to be talented in anything. I've never seen a person in my life who hasn't succeeded in anything he tries it. He can't sing. He's not funny. He doesn't know how to host a show. He can't even do a radio show properly. He doesn't know how to fade out stuff on the mixing board. I'm trying to think of other things he's trying to do in his life that he's complete. Oh, gambling. Yeah, gambling, of course. He buys lottery tickets. Even trying money, he can't do right. Oh, and of course, my favorite, win a nutting contest with Magic Matt at
Oh,
Corral.
okay.
Literally, he doesn't know how to do anything right or good at. He can't write a book correctly. He didn't even find an editor to help him with that. I, I can't think of one. Well, maybe Chris Chan, who can't really do anything correctly. I mean, with Terry A. Davis, he actually invented something that was sort of an akin to the 3D printers that we have today. He was actually very intelligent until his paranoid schizophrenia really caught up with him. George, on the other hand, he's not known for doing anything correctly, which is, I think, another characteristic of a lolcow. They fail at everything they do, and that is definitely applies to George.
Yeah. You know what? I want to throw a real curveball at you. Is that okay?
Oh, most definitely.
Is there anything, can you say one thing about George that you think he is good at or a good trait? Just one.
Oh God, that's a tough one. Well, he can drive a car, not well. Um, yeah, what does one can do? I think in terms of making people unintentionally laugh at him, I mean, laugh at him as opposed to with him, that's something he's good at. But in
Yeah,
terms
he
of
is
something
very
that
good at that.
yes, but in terms of something he's intrinsically good at, that's, I guess, if you want to call manipulation a good quality, he's good at manipulating people with low self esteem and making them feel like garbage, like he did with Jamie and some of the other people he's had in his life. But I mean, once again, anybody who has low self esteem, I don't consider that to be much of a strength or accomplishment. Yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
trying. Oh,
Yeah,
you know
that's
what? He
well
can eat.
said.
He can eat.
There you go. Got it.
He can eat.
You got it. He can eat.
He's a part of Clean Plate Club.
Yep. Even other people's plates.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I honestly, yeah, that is just so hard. I'm sure people in the comments will put good stuff that he's done. I can't think of it.
Yeah, I'd be
Because
curious to hear.
he's even a bad bullshitter. He's not even good at lying to other people. I don't know anybody who's bought his BS for a long period of time. I, I it's like grasping at straws. Literally can't think of anything, and I've been following this guy since the mid 2000s now.
I do remember in his long ass tirade, or his long ass review of a True Narrative
Mm-hmm.
podcast, he did mention that he paid Jamie's medical bills, which I remember when I heard that thinking, that is a really nice thing to do. But then, I mean, I wonder if he at any point asked Jamie to pay him back, which seems on brand.
I know George well enough where if he offers to do something, he expects it back tenfold. So I don't think he did it where it was a charitable thing. I think he did it for interest.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sean, do you have any unpopular opinions within the community that you'd speak on?
Unpopular.
Anything
Uh,
controversial?
yeah, I've been thinking about. I have no idea really because I agree with Goons about everything. Um, If I think of something while we're talking, I'll let you know. But at least in this moment, anyway, I can't think of anything.
Yeah, yeah, that's all good. I mean, there aren't really a lot floating around out there. Every now and then, someone will have a theory that doesn't seem to match up with what everyone else is saying. But I
Well,
mean,
that's normal. I mean, we're all humans.
yeah,
Yeah, not everybody's going to agree with each other.
right,
Um,
yeah. So
like even us laughing at Joe Biden's love story, that's something we can all agree with. I know you don't know that saga, but he's a hilarious guy in our community for all the wrong reasons.
um, what? So you yourself have had a pretty active role in trolling George. You know, you're not just a lurker. You've been hands-on for years and years. What would you say are your marquee highlights when it comes to trolling George?
Wow, that is uh, that's something I gotta say because this was mentioned. I forgot whose video it was in that he said I was the main gorgeous George troll, which isn't true. It's been a group effort all along. The only thing, in my opinion, that I did was I really pressed George on the fair use thing. And I would say if I was known for anything else, beside winning the lol suits against George, would be the Gorgeous George sex movies. And the whole reason I made those was so George would rage some more. It was a battle of inches, I would say, with me and George. I wanted to take back all those little false flag things he did on YouTube, and with some of the stuff I knew, and with some of the help of the goons, yeah, we were able to accomplish that. But it was a group effort. I mean, I can't say that I've done 100% of the work with all of it anyway. Um, Even now, I've sort of taken a back seat, and like the inner circle especially does circles around George. Or matter of fact, they've done stuff that I only wish I could have made him do, made it done back in the day. Excuse me.
Yeah, I appreciate your humble nature, but you've
Mhm.
definitely done a lot. And your videos are just so funny. Is
Oh,
there
thank you.
is there any video in particular that stands out as a real accomplishment to you, or are you just equally proud of all of
I
them?
I this is something you'll understand if you're a director, because prior to all of this, I directed stuff in college, and so I was no really stranger to editing and being behind the scenes with stuff before. When you're done with something, you never feel like it's done. You always feel like you could have added something. I know with a lot of my videos, I've had typos, misspellings, uh, things that weren't edited properly, and so I always feel like things could have been done better. But in terms of some of my favorite videos, I still like my first two Why Gorgeous George Sucks movies. That was sort of a prelude to the Gorgeous George Sucks movies, and then I had something in between. I think that was the reason Gorgeous George Sucks. But the thing that still makes me laugh, of course, is when I had my prank call show for a very short period of time. Of course, I had to call George during that, and that was when I got him to believe that I was I was in Richmond Airport. That I got him to believe at the same time I was still in the air, and I got him to wait at a gay bar where there was an incident where some guy bit on some guy's dick in the glory hole. Even then, George didn't really question it. He thought, "Oh, but yeah, I've experienced that too."
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
right. And then came up with that picking up
mhm.
a stripper
Yeah.
excuse, a lady
I was
dancer.
literally, I was literally throwing George softballs because I wanted him to actually think I was a prank caller, and even after all of that, he still bought it anyway because he's not that smart. George will always try to sell you on the fact that He went to Carnegie College and all this other stuff. No, he's not smart. He's very gullible.
Yeah, yeah, I loved that you said in the video you could do this again. I think you said you could call him tomorrow and do it again.
I literally could have. I could have, and he would have bought it then too. Yeah, George. I'm not kidding. If any of you want to do something similar to George, yeah, he'll buy it because he does DoorDash now. I'm sure there's a way to prank him through DoorDash, and he wouldn't be aware of it. Like ordering like a pizza with no sauce, no crust, then on the bottom, in case person doesn't pick up, give to fat delivery driver or something like that, or some driver named George Yaird.
Oh, that would be so funny.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who are new to the community, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and they only kind of, I mean, they don't really have a good grasp yet on this whole saga and who George is as a person more specifically. Is there any recommended starting place you would say for watching YouTube videos? I mean, the are the GG sucks videos a good starting spot?
That is actually a very tough question because I've known some goons who started with the Michael Saunders calls. I've known some who started with the Gorgeous George Sucks movies, and of course, there's been goons like us who've been watching it all the way since the original GG Sucks videos. Uh, it depends on if you want to know George as the lolcow figure, in which case I would say either the Gorgeous George Sucks movie or no, I take that back. The Gorgeous George videos. If you want to know sort of what he was like as a person and how bad he is at his show, then I would say the Gorgeous George Sucks movies. Then if you want to know what a piece of shit person George is, then I would say the Michael Saunders calls. It depends on what
Yeah.
direction you want to go in.
No, that totally makes sense. I'm sure people really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Now moving to being a troll, just in general, from a psychological standpoint, why do you troll?
And yeah, that is not an easy question to ask. Quite honestly, it's just to make people laugh. I mean, just as anybody who is a comedian wants to get into that or wants to become an actor, to make people feel, I'm just in this to make people laugh. And if I do that, great. And if I don't, I understand that. Um, but recently, and I never thought of my videos as this until Eugene mentioned that it got him through work and that people were using this, some people anyway, besides Gene, were using it as a way to cope with certain things in their life. And I never really thought about my videos that way before. And so, yeah, as long as I can make people laugh and help them through whatever they're going through, then that makes me happy.
Yeah, that's really awesome. One of the things I outright have loved about you, Sean, is
Mm-hmm.
um, you were so great at receiving criticism, I guess I'd say. I mean, your
Mm-hmm.
reaction to being insulted by George is like a stark opposite to George himself. And I think that's a big part of what makes someone so ripe for being a lolcow. What advice do you have for new content creators, let's say, about receiving criticism and responding to it in a positive way or a healthy way?
I think that's how you can tell if you're a lolcow or could potentially be a lolcow yourself or not. If anything in this hobby, humility, humility, humility. You have to be open to being wrong. And in addition to that, you have to find, I would say, other trolls that you can trust. Say maybe you have an idea for a video or a Photoshop or a meme or something like that. Find a either Discord troll community or a message board, someplace where you feel like you can feel safe to fail at, and of course not get ridiculed for. Like they can give you legitimate criticism. The obvious place to suggest, of course, is our like I'm the one that runs it, the Goon this Discord community. It is such an overall awesome group of people to be around, and I think that's one of the reasons why there is going to be a meeting coming up. I can't I can only think of a very few people who are on the ass end of it. Like for example, Chris was when he started doing all that stupid racist shit, and Joe Biden's love story for being uber political for no fucking good reason. And yeah, there's very few ways you can get trolled out of our community anyway.
Mhm.
The only reason it can happen is if you're an obnoxious, snooty asshole. I mean, we're all assholes in here, but we're all good assholes. We keep it clean with soap.
Yeah, that's very well said. I do
Yep.
echo. I think this is such a great community, and the criticism. I've mentioned this on um, Eugene's profile, but I've
Mhm.
received criticism, and it's been very helpful, and it was very kind and helped me, be a better goon, and I really appreciated that. And I love like Eugene and Meth's backstory, how they those two, like you said, they, got together on Discord and they each wanted to do something and figured out something they could do together. And it's, turned into Fieldins, which is one of the great pillars of this
Absolutely.
community. And, Lewis joining them later. Um, yeah, it's been really awesome. Uh, so, what do you think are some good traits or what are the hallmarks of effective trolling?
Oh god. Oh, I would say number one was what will always be making your the subject of whoever you're trolling react to you. As long as they react to you in some way, whether it would be making a video responding to it, trying to flag it in some way, or any other way which could be interpreted as funny, then you've succeeded. Um, if you haven't, then yeah, you got to be open to being wrong. I mean, going back to receiving criticism, yeah, you got to ask, well, what did I do wrong here? Is there something I could have done better? Um, I'll tell you what, at least trained me for that anyway. Is in the theater when I studied that in college, you could never do anything right. There was
Yeah.
always something you could do better. I mean, not that I would ever compare anything to being in the army, but it's sort of like that. You always fuck up, and you always got to learn from your mistakes because if you don't, it'll fucking kill you. And trolling's much the same way. If you don't learn from your mistakes, then you're either going to fall flat on your face or you're going to end up getting trolled.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I'm just so
That's fine.
fascinated by like the early days of GG trolling.
Hmm.
It from the outside, it seems like at more at the onset of all of this, George had a more active hand in trying to like find out who the goons were. You mentioned earlier and have mentioned before about George, trying to find out more about your personal life. I was curious, what is that like when George is on the hunt?
All right. So, back in the 2000s, I always knew that your information was easily available online. So basically, if you go to the DMV or I'm trying to remember what other place to register your information, then it usually gets updated up online. So what I did, I'm trying to remember what I did. I know I did something where I made for the past, I would say 25 years, I've always made it seem like I was living at my parents' house, which I haven't lived in since about 2003, 4. I forget when. It was around the time when I graduated college. So George uh, tried to call up my parents several times. Um, So I was there. I'll never forget it because a Cowboys game was on, if I remember correctly. I was watching it with my dad, and the phone was ringing, and my dad asked me, "Who's George Yerna?" And I, am, I immediately started laughing, and my dad said, "What's so funny?" And I'm like, "You know what? Go with it. Pick up the phone." And my mom was there, and George was berating them like you wouldn't believe, blaming them for raising a shit son,
Oh,
berating them
man.
for yeah. Um, but just being a general asshole, like blaming them for. My favorite part was, and this is something I haven't revealed before, but blaming them for me being fat. That if I wasn't their parents, then I wouldn't be fat. I'm like, I wanted to go on the phone and tell George that doesn't make any fucking sense. I'm the reason why I'm fat, not my fucking parents. Um,
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah,
You know, so
if it
I'm
was for
really
the fact
curious.
if it wasn't for the fact that I wasn't there on Sunday, because every Sunday for Jesus, for what am I saying? I still go there every Sunday. Um, I would have never heard about the call because my parents probably would not have picked it up, and I'm sure George would have left some sort of harassing message on the answering machine. But he was, I would dare say, if I didn't warn my dad about what kind of person he was shortly before, um, yeah, he would have probably even been more abusive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it
Um,
does. Do you know when George called your father? Do you know if George at least attempted to be like cunningly investigative, or did he just go straight into raging at them about you?
um, I'm trying to remember what my dad said that triggered him to like go off the handle because this was 2011. It was more than a decade ago. Um, but my dad was just answering a simple question and it just set him off. Oh, that's right. He was asking if I lived there with them, which I wasn't at the time. I was living in Norwalk, and it, it- like no, he's got to live there. It does
Right.
something basically not fitting his
Right.
narrative if
His
I didn't
narrative was
live there.
false. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that that 100% sends him into a
Mhm.
rage. Oh,
Yeah,
that's so funny.
yeah, if something doesn't fit 100% into what he's looking for, then yeah, that always sets him off into some sort of funny tirade, which that did that day. And I think it was the next day when he made his first tirade video about me. And that was one of the funny things. My mom went on the phone and started fake crying, saying, "Oh, my son beats me." I come from an Irish family. If I would have so much as touched my mom, I would be beneath the house.
Yeah.
They would have tried some way to hide my existence. My George has no idea what kind of family come from because my parents would beat the ever loving. How do I articulate? Yeah, they would beat me to an inch of my life, basically.
Yeah,
That's the kind of family I come from.
the Irish do not mess around with child rearing.
No, they don't.
I'm gonna
There's a
throw.
reason why the Irish and the Italian get along so well.
Interesting observation. I like that.
Mhm.
All right, I'm gonna throw another potential hard one at you. Uh,
Okay.
it, Thinking about everybody who has been in Gigi's camp or is currently in Gigi's camp, is there someone you believe has done a significant amount of unintentional damage to Gigi's reputation? So this does not count Angela doing, interacting with the goons.
All right. So there's been to me the people that have always quote unquote done the most damage to them have always been women. I don't know why it is he gets more easily offended by what women do versus by what men do. Maybe that has something to do with his dad disappointing him so many times in his life that he's used to it. The first woman that I think really set him off was Sarah Metz, who was, I'm trying to remember, the goons can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but she was some sort of part-time actress in New York who did if I remember correctly, a bunch of theater. And George approached her to be on the show, and she was like, "Okay, I'll try it." And it just got a big whiff of how unprofessional it was, how unfunny George was, and George wanted people to think that they were in a relationship, desperately trying to want people to think that they were in a relationship. So, she was like, "Okay, I'll go see your yeah." This was one of the things that was going on was he kept saying, "I want to introduce you to my friends," and she's like, "It's not a date. No, it's not a date." So George rented this expensive room. I don't remember where it was in this restaurant. And waiting there were these two people that she described as like country bumpkins. I don't know who these people were to this day. Um, but she mentioned how George kept trying to pass her off as his girlfriend.
Ew.
And she kept wanting to say no, I'm not, and George kept shutting her off, saying, don't say anything. So at one point she was done, and she said, "No, we're not going together," and left the restaurant, which of course pissed George off. And George kept calling her and calling her and calling her and harassing her to the point where he would leave, if I remember correctly, ads in newspapers trying to find
Oh
where
my
she was at.
gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
stalking her. This was pre Jamie too, by the way. So one of the goons, I want to say it was Leighton Harmon, got in contact with her, and she told him this whole story. I know that I know the screen caps are around somewhere. I don't have them on me, but it is around. Um, when George got wind of this, he went on his 2009 Christmas show and was talking about how, Sarah Metz is old. I would never go for her. When you could tell that he had this thing for her really easily. Like, oh, yeah, she's not the kind of woman I would go for. Um,
Yeah, nice cover, George.
yeah, and my favorite thing was he was trying to use this. I would say mid 2000s era sort of voice box things. I mean, by this point, people were using Android phones. I mean, you could easily use sound clips from there. George was, yeah, using this. I don't know what they call those stupid sound boxes, but George was trying to use that and would not put the speaker against the microphone so everybody could hear it, or put like an audio cable could go through it so everybody could hear it over the I guess it would be the mixing board. Um, yeah, you could barely. It was barely audible, and George was just failing all through the night trying to prove how he would never be attracted to her. After that, there was Tori Baker. Tori Baker was interesting in the fact that she commented on one of my videos first about how, and she was being actually very nice about how she thought George wasn't funny. And of course, this threw George into a fit, and made George say, "Well, you know what? I tried to look for your mother," and like would put these things over Tori's head about how he did all these things for her, and why is he not loyal to her. So, yeah, there have been plenty of other people who he's done these things to besides Jamie and Wow, I keep wanting to butcher a name. Jesus Christ! Sorry, I'm having a mind fart again.
No, you're
Um,
good. I wish I knew enough about the saga to throw out some names.
yeah, but there's been plenty of people, but those were the two big people, at least in my day, were Tori and Sarah. Um, but yeah, women are the ones that George easily gets offended by. I would say the most, besides Matt for some reason.
What do you think he's doing?
I actually think Matt has had a pretty miserable life since he's gone out of jail, and rightfully so. I mean, anybody who sexually molests women gets what they deserve in life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What a piece of shit.
And I still can't. No, no, I can believe George tried to use that for his own gain because he was trying to look for somebody to rent the house to pay for the mortgage. And of course, that blew up in his face when his dad saw how bad it was. No, wait, wait, was that the reason? Now I'm forgetting. Holy shit. It was something to that
There's
effect.
so many there's so many pieces to the saga. I do remember that George went to court with Matt's dad.
Yeah,
And I mean it had to do with them living together in
right.
general.
Yeah, and Matt testified against George, and yeah, that was ultimately what drove them apart. Although George will still say that they know each other. I highly doubt it, though.
Yeah. Uh
Because why would you want to say that you know a child molester unless you want to use them? Which could still be the possibility for George, but who knows these days?
oh yeah, no, I don't doubt that if Matt comes into something that George thinks he can benefit from that they'll be buddies again.
Hmm.
What is your impression of George's claim that he is done with the goons?
If I had a nickel for every time he said he's been done with the goons, I would be a multi-billionaire. I'd be able to retire on some island, having a drink in my hand, watching the sunset. Um, I think this was something Angela said too, and this is probably correct. That when George is busy with some woman he's trying to lure, that's when we don't hear from him. When he has nobody in his life or he's not getting laid, that's when he gets pent up and starts going after us. Um, yeah, George is never not going to be done with us, by not by a country mile. Um, it's like I said, I think death will be the thing that ends this saga.
Yeah,
Period.
definitely makes sense. So I only have one more question on my list, and hopefully a fun one
Mm-hmm.
here. Uh, GoonCon 2023, the flagship inaugural GoonCon. What would you say, as one of the leading experts in this community, are the must-dos or the must-sees in Richmond next year?
Oh, that's a good question because there have been a lot of places that aren't around anymore. Like as we discussed, Nacho Mama's, the original one that Gigi was not for going to, that's not there. I think it's. I'm trying to remember what part of Virginia the closest one is now. Um, then I don't know if the RCAN building is still around anymore. Oh, the library, yes. The library with the Lysol incident is most definitely what's up tubes. Um, then let's see. If I knew where the Denny's was at, where he had Master Dong Studio, where George got thrown through a plain glass window. Yeah, that would have to
Oh,
be another one.
I haven't even thought of that. Wow, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Then Pollard Park. There was actually quite a few stories because George recorded a couple of his shows there, but it was rumored that a long time ago he was caught in a porta potty masturbating, ran out of there with his pants half down, tripped over a rock, pulled his pants back up, and started running toward, I think, his car or something to that effect. but I know there's been a lot of funny stories associated with that place. And yeah, I don't know if RCAN's around anymore. Then well, of course, 1307. I mean, you
Yeah, how
can't
can
forget
you
that.
not?
Yeah, Rick's Cafe. Um, then what else is there after that? I know there was another place George used to go to until he got banned from there, but that's escaping me right now. Um,
He was
I would
banned
say,
from Rick's at least temporarily, right?
yeah. Um, I know Fieldens because I know the exterior still exists just to see what that building is still like, and, and if anything, to see what it's turned into. Um, yeah, there's a ton of stuff that I'm sure will be gone over before the event happens. I know we talked about seeing other locales like Chris Chan while we're there, and Ethan Ralph, and a few others. Um, because Virginia as a whole produces probably the most locales in the country, next to, trying to remember, Florida I know is in the top 10, Georgia, and I know a couple other states were mentioned. Uh, but yeah, there's a lot of places to go there, especially in GG content.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great. And I can't wait to do that. Me personally, I'm just hoping like a lot of the old heads like you show up to GoonCon and we can just sit around and listen to stories because that'd be so fun from the old days. Uh, but so another, you made me think of another question, and I'm really curious. You mentioned Virginia having a lot of locales that's been brought up before. Do you have? Is there any opinion you have on that? Is there something
I
going on in Virginia?
my yeah, Deuce always brings up the fact it must be the water, or maybe they need Jesus. Who knows?
Yeah,
Um,
both fair answers.
um, I, well, the obvious one, because I studied psychology for a little bit back in college, is their upbringing. I know with the Chandler family, anyway, both parents were not necessarily hands off with Chris, but would pretty much let him do whatever he wanted to. And I think that's why he's the narcissist he is today. With George, I think it's much the same way, except I think his dad just plopped him down in television. And in George's mind, I think he thought TV was the way life would be. Whatever he wanted, he could get. As a matter of fact, oh, I didn't think of that until now. Much in the same way that the movie Scrooge was like, if
Oh,
you've
with
ever seen it.
Bill Murray?
Yeah,
Huh.
because there's a part in the movie where the Ghost of Christmas Past takes him back, and his dad brings him like some meat for Christmas, and,
Right.
and he looks so disappointed. I can imagine one Christmas George got meat, and he was probably the happiest kid on the block. I
Huh.
really do think that's what George's childhood was like. Um, then with Ethan Ralph, it just seemed like he had no discipline in his life. Uh, he, there was a call with his mother, like his mother had to go to dialysis or something, and he was like, "Leave me alone. I'll take you later." It was just the most. Yeah, I wanted to go right through the screen and punch him in the face. I've never had that reaction with any lolcow, but I so badly wanted to punch Ethan in the face when I heard that whole exchange. But there's also, in addition to that, let's see, there's Kristen, who is a complete piece of shit of a mother. I mean, any woman who puts a stripper pole in the living room along with a 2 foot tall wooden dildo deserves all my ire.
Yeah,
And
I mean that merits a CPS checkup.
yes, and then of course you have Roger. I mean Roger. Jesus, Roger and Rod. That's a I'll tell you why I said Roger is because I instantly combined both their names when I
Yeah,
saw
I
both
know
of
it.
them at
I
the same
love it. I absolutely love it. Please make that a thing. I enjoyed that
time.
a lot.
Roger. Yeah, Roger. It's interesting. So I was watching a stream with Lewis on Sunday, and he had Roger did this video called "Band Problems," and I found it fascinating in the fact that he was blaming, in the video anyway, he was blaming all these different genres of bands why he was having all these problems finding a band when it was sort of this projection, sort of delusional thing going on. How he can't find friends in his life, girlfriends, all these different aspects of his life. He blames everybody but himself, much in the same way George
Oh
has.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I hate so much that I know
Mhm.
people's opinions about Roger are a little different, and with good reason, but I hate to think that Roger is picking up some of George's traits because he does he is showing kind of the same disconnect from reality as George, where like if a lot of people don't like him, instead of saying, "Hey, I'm the X factor, it must be something with me," it's automatically, "Oh, it's all everyone else's fault."
As that old expression goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I guess not.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, that wraps up all of the questions I had. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything else you want to say before we close out?
Actually, I just want to thank all the goons. Really, if it wasn't for the people watching this, you, and really, I know people like to say lurkers these days, but like anybody who's watched this, um, thank you. I mean, thank you for watching the crap that I've produced over the years. Thank you for like all the comments you've left. All like if you had any criticism, thank you for that. Because Lord knows I'm not perfect. Um, and really, I want to thank all the goons. Lewis has been fucking excellent lately. Um, then, of course, Eugene, his wife, Dr. Joy, Meth is. I don't think Meth realizes how much more talented she is. I mean, because she's really humble, but like she makes these wicked observations when she's on with Eugene sometimes, and I don't think she realizes it. Boston Soul's awesome, along with oh, how can I not forget? And I'm kicking myself right now. Because he's my butt in chat all the time. Finite, yes, of course.
Oh yeah,
Finite.
finite,
If
formerly
we
finite joy.
see each other, and kick my ass for me forgetting your name.
There.
But Captain Corpulence, of course, one of the OG trolls. Speaking of OG trolls, Josh, Leighton Harmon. God, I'm gonna forget so many names, but I literally want to thank all you guys. Um, and of course, as usual, because I'm not the most articulate person in the world, I'm gonna forget everybody. But I fucking love each and every. I know that sounds like I'm kissing ass here, but I legitimately love all you. This fucking hug box. I don't know why I want to call it a hug box for some reason, but I fucking love our group. I mean, it's probably one of the most awesome groups I've met in a long time, both in real life and on the internet. I mean, all of you Atis and uh, really brilliant trolls are like bring so much to the party that I know so many people still want to say that I did a lot of this shit. It wasn't. It's been a group effort, and thank you for what you've done.
That was really nice,
It,
Sean. Thanks. And I definitely
and I
echo
thank
that
you,
this is a
Doctor
great
Amir. Hmm.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, getting to know people has been my um outright favorite part of doing all of this. I have really enjoyed talking with everyone in the community. Maybe at the end of the day, one good thing George has done is brought us all together.
Yeah, that was one of the things I brought up earlier. I mean, I've not. I got to think in recent past if there's been any quote unquote cons that have happened. I can't think of any. Maybe. Oh no, there was the 4chan raid when they were in New York, and I'm sure somebody will point it out. I forget that guy's name. Fuck me running. Anyway, I'm really horrible with references
Oh, it's a lot to keep
as
in one
usual.
brain when you've been a part of
Yes.
it for this long. I mean, I've been hands-on in this for I don't know 3 months, and I still
Mhm.
have trouble remembering stuff. I gotta imagine how long you've been in here. It's hard to keep it all straight.
Um, no, but I would say 99% of the people in this community are awesome
Yeah, I think
and,
that's a good
and
number.
approachable. It's like you'll be on not well, 4chan could be an example of that, but there's certain where if you approach them, they'll be really snooty and hands off. Where here, if you have a question about anybody, even legal Swede, I'm sure he'd take time out to answer questions if you needed something.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The inner circle and all y'all who kind of manage this community have done such a great job, um, kind of building it to a place where people can feel comfortable coming in and
Hmm.
asking questions and getting to know the saga. Well, thank you very much, Sean, for doing this. Really
Oh,
awesome
thank you.
conversation. It was as cool as I thought it'd be. Everybody really appreciates all you've done and continue to do, and it's nice to hear your voice again. Other than a few appearances on Fieldins, I feel like it's been a hot minute, so I'm sure everybody really enjoys hearing you talk about Gigi again.
No, it's been fun. It's sort of weird talking. I know this is going to sound weird. It's weird talking about myself in the. How do I articulate this? That I've sort of made a difference in the GG community. It's like I said, me being a troll. I'm just here to make people laugh. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get you. Well, we have
Mm,
very much been laughing. Some of the funniest videos on the internet, I think, are on your channels.
mm.
But yeah, that'll do it. Thank you very much, Sean, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Take care, guys.